This boy was kidnapped by a Roblox player. Today's story is about a 14-year-old boy whose innocent online friendship led to him being locked in a dark basement. Ready to find out how a virtual game became a deadly trap? I'm going to tell you everything, straight from the words of Matvey, a name that's been changed to protect his identity. The nightmare all started when Matvey lived in a small town where every single day looked exactly like the one before it. Cracked asphalt streets, gray 5-story apartment blocks, paint peeling off every building facade. Everything about this place seemed to scream abandonment. For teenagers, the only entertainment was a set of rusty merry-go-rounds in the local park and an old movie theater, long shut down but still used as a hangout spot for high schoolers. Matvey was 14, and he felt like a complete outsider. At school, nobody really bullied him, but nobody noticed him either. He wasn't a sports star with his name echoing at competitions, and he wasn't a straight-A student that teachers held up as an example. His classmates called him a game addict because every single break he'd sit in the corner with his phone, playing Roblox. But Matvey didn't care. See, he had another world, one where he wasn't just some invisible kid, but an actual legend. You'd understand if you saw what he could do. Under the username MadStorm77, he built incredible things in Roblox. In Bloxburg, his creations were mind-blowing. Modern villas with floor-to-ceiling windows and pools, cozy cottages with fireplaces surrounded by virtual snowdrifts, entire cities with maze-like streets and secret rooms. His builds became sensations on the servers. Players would log on just to look. Some even begged him to teach them how to build. Here, in this pixelated world, Matvey felt like he actually belonged. Here, he was respected. Here, he was someone, not just a shadow drifting through school hallways. Can you imagine what that feels like? Being a king in one world, but a nobody in another. At home, things were completely different. His parents, wrapped up in their own worries, rarely had time to really talk. His dad, a tall man with tired eyes and calloused hands, would come home from the factory late every evening, eat dinner in silence, and park himself in front of the TV, flipping through channels without any real interest. His mom, always busy with housework and her side job at a sewing factory, would ask the usual questions. How was school? Did you do your homework? Why are you sitting in your room again? Matvey kept his answers short. He didn't want to explain how he'd been skipped over again when teams were picked in gym class, how he'd sat through the entire lunch break alone scrolling through his phone, or how a classmate had whispered, "loser," at him the moment the teacher turned away. Instead, he'd rush to his room, lock the door, fire up his old laptop with the cracked screen, and dive into Roblox, so waiting there. There was another world there, one where he could actually breathe, where his walls of pixels felt stronger than the concrete walls of his real house. One evening, while Matvey was putting the finishing touches on a luxury mansion, a pool surrounded by virtual palm trees, a garden where every single bush was placed with perfect symmetry, a new player joined his server. An avatar with bright pink hair and gothic-style clothing, a black hoodie, wide-leg pants. The avatar stood silently in the corner of the garden, not moving. The username was simple, but it stuck with him. Lena Dark HG. Matvey didn't pay much attention at first. Plenty of people dropped by to check out his builds. He was used to strangers typing "cool" and disappearing. But a few minutes later, a message appeared in the chat that made him stop dead. It wasn't the usual "nice house" or "how did you do that?" It was something completely different. "You build such beautiful worlds for people who don't exist. Why?" Matvey froze, reading it again. It was strange, almost philosophical, and it hit something deep inside him. He felt like there was something bigger behind those words than just ordinary game chat small talk. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as thoughts started spinning in his head. Why did he build? Why did he spend hours on pixel houses that no one would ever see in real life? He thought for a second, then typed back, "I don't know. I guess I just like building. It's like creating a place where everything is perfect. What about you? Why do you ask?" And that was the moment a conversation began that would turn his entire life upside down. Lena wasn't like the other players Matvey had come across in Roblox. She didn't show off rare skins, she didn't beg for Robux, and she didn't try to compete with his builds. She was interested in strange, deep things that people just didn't normally talk about in a game. She asked Matvey if he ever felt lonely, even when there were people all around him. She asked if real life ever felt like just a boring routine with no way out. Matvey had never talked about stuff like this, not even with the people he might loosely call his friends. But somehow, he felt like he could be completely honest with her. He told her how he sometimes felt invisible at school, how it seemed like nobody really understood him, how he was scared he'd always be a nobody. Lena read his messages and responded like she'd known him his whole life. "I get it," she wrote. "Sometimes it feels like you're living in someone else's game. Everyone else has a role and you just don't." They started playing together every single day. Lena wasn't a skilled builder at all. Her avatar would constantly get stuck in textures or fall off rooftops, which made Matvey laugh, but she loved wandering through his worlds. She'd sit in his virtual gardens, watch the sunsets he'd set up with lighting filters, and just talk to him. Their conversations went way beyond the game itself. She told him about her life in a small coastal town where, as she put it, everything was gray except for the sea, which roared when a storm rolled in. She said she felt like an outsider among kids her age, that her only real friends were her black cat named Shadow and old books she read alone up in the attic, or at the cafe where she'd sit by herself. Matvey, in turn, shared everything with her. Fights with his parents over his gaming, his dream of one day building his own game, and even fears he'd never admitted to anyone before. He told her how his dad once said gaming was a waste of time, and how those words had stung way harder than he expected. Lena listened, and her responses felt like medicine for a wound. "You're not wasting time," she wrote. "You're creating, and that's more than most people ever do." After a couple of weeks of chatting on Roblox, it started to feel like it wasn't enough. Lena suggested moving to a messenger app so they could talk more directly, swap voice messages, maybe even call. Matvey agreed without a second thought. How to listen. And her words always hit how to listen, and her words always hit exactly where they needed to. When Matvey felt crushed after another fight with his dad or after being mocked in class, she could say something simple but completely right. "You're not alone, Matvey. I'm right here, and I care about you." And he believed her. Her voice became an anchor, something that kept him afloat on the days when everything around him felt like it was falling apart. She'd send him photos, not of herself, but these strange, atmospheric shots that seemed to reflect her inner world. A raging sea in shades of gray, with foamy waves smashing against rocks. Abandoned houses with broken windows, surrounded by tall, wild grass. Her cat Shadow, staring straight into the camera with yellow eyes, like he knew some kind of secret. Matvey asked why she never sent a photo of herself, but Lena always brushed it off. "I'm not photogenic. Just picture me however you want. Maybe I'm actually a witch from some old fairy tale." And Matvey did picture her. He built an image in his mind of a mysterious girl with pink hair, just like her avatar, serious, deep eyes, and a faint, barely there smile. He didn't know what she actually looked like, but it didn't matter. She had become more important to him than anyone in real life. Lena was his secret, his safe place, the person who saw him for exactly who he was. But sometimes, in rare, quiet moments, when her voice faded from his headphones and her messages stopped coming, Matvey would feel a strange unease creep in. Why did she avoid showing herself? Why did her stories sometimes sound like she was hiding something? He pushed those thoughts away, but they always came back, like dark shadows at the edge of his mind. He couldn't know that those shadows were about to close in around him. And hey, subscribe to the channel. My goal is so close. Your support means the world to me. 4 months passed. Matvey and Lena talked every single day, sometimes for hours. He'd wake up thinking about what he was going to write her, and he'd fall asleep rereading their conversations or listening to her voice messages. His parents started noticing he was even more withdrawn than usual, that his eyes were constantly glued to his phone or his laptop screen. His mom tried to reach him once, asking if everything was okay, but Matvey just brushed her off. "Everything's fine. I'm just tired." His dad was less gentle. At one point, he just shut the laptop mid-game and said, "Stop living in a made-up world. It's time to grow up." Matvey said nothing, but inside he was burning. They didn't understand. They had no idea their son had a secret, a person who had become his entire world. Then one evening, while Matvey was lying in bed scrolling through their chat, Lena sent something that made his heart stop. "What if we actually meet? In real life?" He read it over and over, not quite believing his eyes. Meet in person? It was like going from a game to a whole new level. Except this time it wasn't a game at all. His fingers were trembling as he typed back, "Are you serious? Where? When?" Lena explained she didn't want anything basic. No cafe, no movie theater. She had a better idea. "There's this place near my town," she wrote, "an abandoned radio station out in the woods, built back in the Soviet era. Nobody goes there anymore. It's like a location straight out of a game, Except it's real. Just imagine. Just us, silence, and secrets. Our own private server. Matvey felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. It sounded crazy, but at the same time, incredibly tempting. It was like a Roblox adventure, but in the real world. He pictured the two of them exploring an abandoned building together, like in those treasure hunter movies or horror games where you have to solve puzzles. He could see dark hallways, rusted machinery, graffiti on the walls, and himself and Lena walking side by side, laughing at how bold they were. But somewhere deep down, something pricked at him. A tiny voice of doubt. What if it's dangerous? What if she's not who she says she is? What if it's a trap? Matvey pushed those thoughts away fast. Lena was his friend, his closest person. He trusted her more than anyone. She couldn't be lying to him, could she? He knew his parents would never let him travel to another town to meet some girl he'd met on the internet. So he decided to lie. He told them he was heading to a classmate's place for the weekend to work on a school project. His mom, busy with her own things, just nodded. Okay, just stay in touch. And take some food. I don't want you going hungry. His dad barely reacted, just mumbled something like, just don't get yourself into trouble. Matvey packed his backpack, a change of clothes, his phone charger, a bottle of water, and a couple of sandwiches his mom had packed for the road. He felt a pang of guilt for the lie, but the excitement of finally meeting Lena drowned everything else out. He imagined seeing her for the first time, hugging her, everything they'd talked about finally becoming real. It felt like stepping into the unknown, like loading a brand new map in a game, except with real stakes this time. On the day of the trip, he woke up earlier than usual, too wired to sleep. He boarded the bus that would carry him to Lena's town. His heart pounded as the scenery outside the window shifted from city streets to vast open fields, and then to dark forests where the trees stood so close together, it felt like they were hiding something ancient and dangerous. When the bus finally pulled up to a small, nearly empty station, surrounded by crooked trees and the smell of damp air, Matvey saw her. A girl with pink hair, in a black jacket and jeans, standing at the stop, staring off into the distance. She was real, not an avatar, not a voice in his phone, an actual living person. She turned toward him and her eyes, large, dark, serious, met his. There was no smile, but Matvey hadn't really expected one. He thought she was the most unusual and fascinating person he'd ever met. But something in her gaze made his chest tighten. It wasn't happiness he saw there. It wasn't even surprise. It was something else. Something he didn't have a name for yet. They walked for over an hour to reach the forest. Lena led the way with total confidence, like she knew every turn of the path, every route that could trip you up. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became. The hum of distant cars faded away. All that was left was the rustle of leaves, the crunch of branches underfoot, and the occasional cry of a bird, which sounded less like birdsong and more like a warning. Matvey tried to get her talking. He asked about the radio station, about her life, about how often she came out here. But Lena gave short, almost detached answers. "You'll see," she said flatly when he asked again what was waiting for them. Her silence was starting to get to him, but he told himself it was just nerves from meeting in person. Maybe she's nervous too, he thought. Maybe she just doesn't know what to say when everything feels this real. But with every step, the trees grew thicker and the shadows stretched longer, and Matvey felt a chill crawl up his spine. It wasn't just the cold of an autumn day, it was something else. Finally, they came to the building. It was a massive gray concrete structure, swallowed by overgrowth and covered in graffiti. It looked menacing, but also strangely mesmerizing. Tall walls, cracked in places, towered over the trees. Rusted antennas jutted from the roof like the bones of some long-forgotten creature. Lena pointed to a gap in the fence where the barbed wire had broken apart. They squeezed through. The main gate was locked with a heavy, rusted padlock, but she knew where there was a broken window around the back. They climbed inside. It smelled like damp and mold. The floor was littered with broken glass and scraps of old wiring. Light barely filtered through the grimy windows. Every footstep echoed through the empty corridors. Matvey felt that chill race down his spine again. This was exactly like exploring a new location in a game, except everything here was real. He even pulled out his phone to take a few shots, but Lena stopped him. "Don't. Here, it's better to just look." Her voice was colder than usual, and Matvey noticed her fingers trembling ever so slightly. Lena walked him through the building like she knew every corner of it. They moved through empty rooms, scattered with rusty metal scraps, old radios with broken knobs, and piles of yellowed papers that crunched underfoot. Strange words were scratched into the walls, some in Russian, others in a language Matvey didn't recognize. In one room, he spotted an old poster with faded text, "Broadcasting Service," and beside it, a rusted floor number sign. The atmosphere was unsettling, but somehow still captivating. Matvey felt like a character in some kind of quest, on the hunt for a hidden artifact or the answer to a riddle. But the further they went, the stronger the feeling grew. He was noticing now that Lena wasn't just exploring, she was searching for something, or someone. Finally, Lena stopped at a metal staircase that descended into total darkness. "The most interesting part is down there," she said. Her voice sounded different now, colder than before. Matvey hesitated. "What's down there?" he asked, straining to see anything in the blackness below. "Don't be scared. Let's go," she answered, and started down the steps. The metal rang out under her feet with every step. He followed, even though each step felt like it took everything he had. The staircase was narrow, with rusty railings that wobbled when he grabbed them. The lower they went, the more intensely the damp smell hit him, the air growing heavier, like they were walking into some underground cave. Matvey could feel sweat running down his temple despite the cold. His heart was beating faster and faster, and that small voice of doubt, the one he'd been trying to silence, grew louder in his head. "What am I doing? Why am I even here?" he thought. But his feet kept moving, following Lena, as if something invisible was pushing him forward. The staircase ended in a small room, a small concrete basement, empty except for an old wooden chair sitting in the center. No windows, no light, just cold walls and the smell of mold. Matvey stopped, feeling his heart hammer harder. "What is this place? Why are we here?" he asked, trying to keep the trembling out of his voice. Lena turned to face him. For the first time since they'd met, she smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold, almost frightening. "This is the end of the level," she said quietly. "Sit in the chair." Matvey froze. Her words landed like commands, but he still couldn't tell, was this a joke, or was it something real? "I don't like this, Lena. Let's just go," he said, stepping back toward the stairs. His voice cracked, and he heard it himself. "I said sit," she repeated. Her voice had gone hard, almost threatening. Before Matvey could react, she spun around and bolted up the stairs. He heard a heavy metallic clang, then the sound of a bolt sliding shut from the outside. He lunged after her, but it was too late. The door, heavy steel, wouldn't budge. He pounded on it. He slammed his fists against it, screamed her name until his throat felt like it was on fire. But there was nothing. Just silence and darkness that closed around him like the jaws of something invisible. His screams bounced off the concrete walls, but no one heard them. He was alone, locked in, trapped. Matvey didn't know how much time had passed. Minutes? Hours? In the dark of that basement, time had stopped meaning anything. His phone, which he'd tried using as a flashlight, drained quickly, leaving him in absolute darkness. He sat on the cold floor, arms wrapped around his knees, trying to breathe steadily. But every breath came loaded with panic. Why did she do this? Why? The questions spun in circles. He replayed their conversations, her voice, her words about how he was never alone. Was all of it a lie? Was this some kind of sick game? He tried yelling again, but his voice was gone, just a rasp now, and his throat burned with every sound. No one was coming. No one knew where he was. He started feeling his way along the walls, hoping to find something, anything. A crack? A gap? Anything. The concrete was cold and rough under his fingers, but there was no way out. Only damp and the smell of mold that seemed to seep into his skin. He found the wooden chair Lena had pointed to and sat down on it, just to get off the floor. It creaked under his weight, and that sound, the only sound in the silence, made him flinch. Matvey felt hunger beginning to twist his stomach. The sandwiches he'd packed were in his backpack. His backpack was at the entrance to the basement, where Lena had left it. There was no water. His throat had gone completely dry. Every swallow hurt. He tried to think about something good. Tried to remember his Roblox builds, the sunsets in Bloxburg, the sound of Lena laughing when her avatar got stuck in a wall. But the memories only sharpened the pain. She had betrayed him. She had lured him here. But why? Hours became days. Or at least, that's how it felt. Matvey was starting to lose his grip on reality. In the darkness, his mind began painting shadows that moved across the walls, even though he knew it was impossible. He heard sounds that weren't there, footsteps that didn't exist. At one point, he thought he heard Lena's voice, soft and calm, just like through his headphones. "You're not alone, Matvey," she whispered, and he screamed for that voice to stop. Hunger and thirst were driving him to the edge. He tried licking moisture off the walls, but it was just damp, bitter, and disgusting. His hands shook. His legs gave out beneath him every time he stood to walk the perimeter of the basement again. He knew he couldn't hold on much longer. He could feel his strength leaving him. His body felt heavier, his thoughts cloudier. But then, at some point, just when he was barely hanging on, he heard something. A real sound, not a hallucination. It was a distant rumble, like someone moving around up above. Matvey pulled together every last bit of strength he had and started screaming, hammering on the door until his knuckles split and bled. "Help! I'm down here! I'm in the basement!" he rasped, not knowing if anyone could possibly hear him. The rumble grew closer, and then he heard voices. Men's voices, rough but alive. "You hear that? Someone's screaming," one of them said. "Down there, in the basement," the other replied. The metallic grind of the bolt, the creak of the door, and then a flashlight beam hit his eyes like a physical blow. Matvey squeezed them shut, not able to believe this was real. They found him. He was saved. Matvey was pulled out of that basement by two men, local forest rangers who had come to check out the abandoned radio station after reports of strange noises. They were stunned when they saw him, a teenager, emaciated, bruises covering his hands, a wild look in his eyes. They gave him water from a flask. They called an ambulance and the police. Matvey couldn't speak, just rasped and cried the whole way to the hospital. The doctors said he had been in that basement for nearly 3 full days. Much longer, and he wouldn't have made it. His parents rushed to the hospital. His mom was sobbing as she held him. His dad was silent, but his hands were shaking when he gripped his son's shoulder. Matvey could see the fear and the guilt in their eyes. They hadn't known where he'd gone. They hadn't known about Lena. The police opened an investigation. They found Matvey's backpack at the basement entrance. His phone, completely dead. They searched for Lena, but the girl with pink hair had vanished. Nobody in the town she'd claimed as her own had ever heard of her. Her Roblox account had been deleted. Her profile in the Messenger app was gone, like she had never existed at all. But the police did find something in the basement. An old notebook hidden underneath the chair. Inside were notes written in multiple different handwriting styles describing a game. Some kind of twisted ritual where players lured victims to abandoned locations and left them there to complete a level. Matvey understood then that Lena, whoever she really was, had been part of something much bigger, something dark. He hadn't been her friend, he had been her target. Time passed, but Matvey couldn't go back to the life he'd had before. He never logged into Roblox again. He couldn't look at those pixelated worlds without hearing her voice, seeing her pink hair, seeing that cold smile. He'd wake up in the middle of the night from nightmares where he was back in that basement and the door was slamming shut with that metallic clang. His parents moved him to a different school, in a different town, but the shadows from the past followed him everywhere. He felt guilty for believing her, for lying to his parents, for almost dying because of how naive he'd been. But the question that haunted him most was, who was Lena? Was she even real? Or was she just an avatar? Someone else hiding behind it? There's no answer, and there may never be. This story isn't just about a kid and a game, it's a warning. A warning about how easy it is to lose the line between what's virtual and what's real, and how dangerous it is to trust someone you've never actually seen. Matvey survived, but his life will never be the same. I found this story online on a Roblox creepypasta site. Do you think Lena was real? Drop it in the comments, tell me what you think. And if you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Now check out my next video, about a girl who met a boy in Roblox who turned out to be a stalker and actually showed up at her house. Go click it and watch right now.